My stepmom said, "I'm selling the house your dad left you." But she forgot I had the original will in my safety deposit box. She was sitting at our kitchen table like she owned the place, which, technically, she thought she did. Dad had been gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of watching her redecorate his study, donate his clothes, and measure the windows for new curtains. "You understand this is what's best," she said, stirring her coffee. "The house is too big for you anyway. You're only 23. I nodded, stayed quiet. What she didn't know was that 2 days before Dad died, he'd called me to the hospital. His hands were shaking as he pressed an envelope into mine. "I need you to take this to the bank," he'd whispered. Inside was a revised will, dated a week earlier, leaving everything to me. At the bank, I opened the safety deposit box Dad had set up in my name. Inside was the original will, notarized and witnessed. The house, the accounts, the car collection, all mine. There was also a letter explaining how he'd discovered her affair with his business partner, how she'd convinced him to update his will while he was on pain medication, how he'd quietly had his lawyer draft the real will once his head cleared. Now she was planning to sell my inheritance, using a forged will she'd filed with probate. I'd spent the last week with Dad's lawyer, Patricia. We had copies of everything. "I'm meeting with a realtor this afternoon," she continued. "We should get at least $850,000. I'm looking at close to $2 million. She paused. "I'll give you $50,000. $50,000 out of my $2 million inheritance." "That's very kind," I said quietly. "I'm glad you're being reasonable," she said, standing. "Oh, and I'll need you moved out by the end of the month." "Actually," I said, "I don't think that's going to work." She froze. "Excuse me?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I'd saved. The real will, crystal clear. "The house isn't yours to sell." Her face went white, then red. "That's ridiculous. I have the will. Everything goes to me." "You have a will," I corrected. "Not the will." Silence stretched between us. I could see her mind racing. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said quietly. Her voice had changed completely. "If you try to contest this, I will bury you in legal fees." "Patricia Chen called this morning," I interrupted. "Dad's lawyer. She's very interested in discussing document fraud." The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood. "You little bitch," she whispered. "I learned from the best." I stood up. "You have until 5 quant p.m. to remove your belongings. After that, I'm changing the locks." "This isn't over," she hissed. "My boyfriend has connections. People who can make your life very difficult." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." I left her standing there, drove to Patricia's office. We spent 3 hours documenting everything. That evening, as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The front door was open, just slightly. I always locked it. I sat in my car, phone in hand. That's when I saw movement in the upstairs window. My father's study. Someone was in there, and I had a terrible feeling I knew what they were looking for. The only copy of Dad's letter, the one I'd left in his desk drawer. As I dialed 911, I heard glass shatter from inside. The dispatcher's voice was calm. "What's your emergency?" "There's someone in my house," I said, watching the shadow move past the window again. "Second floor, my father's study." "Are you inside the residence?" "No, I'm in my car in the driveway." "Stay there. Officers are on their way." 3 minutes felt like 30. I kept my eyes on that window. The shadow disappeared, then reappeared in the hallway, moving toward the stairs. Then the front door swung fully open. My stepmom's boyfriend walked out carrying a leather document folder. Dad's folder, the one that held all his personal papers. He didn't run, just walked casually to a black Mercedes parked 2 houses down, got in, and drove away. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. Officer Ramirez took my statement while his partner searched the house. "You're sure it was Richard Donovan?" "Positive. I'd met him twice. Once at a company dinner where he'd spent the evening with his hand on my stepmom's lower back. Once at the hospital, the day before Dad died, when I'd walked in on them kissing in the parking garage. And you believe he was looking for specific documents?" "I know he was." I pulled up the photos I'd taken of Dad's letter that morning, just in case. My father left evidence of fraud. Financial documents proving Richard and my stepmom were embezzling from his company. Ramirez's eyebrows rose. "You have proof of this?" "Copies." My father was thorough. The partner came downstairs. Study's been ransacked. Desk drawers emptied. Filing cabinet forced open. They were definitely searching for something specific. "Did they find it?" Ramirez asked. I smiled. "No, because it's not here." That night, I didn't sleep in the house. I went to a hotel with my laptop, the flash drive Dad had given me, and every document Patricia had copied. I spread everything across the bed and started reading. Dad had been meticulous. Bank statements showing monthly transfers of $15,000 from the company account to a shell corporation registered in Richard's name. Emails between my stepmom and Richard, discussing how much longer they'd have to wait before Dad's cancer did its job. Screenshots of text messages planning their future together, paid for with my father's money. There was more. Property deeds, investment accounts, a second house in the Caymans that Richard had purchased using company funds. Dad had documented everything for 6 months, building an airtight case. At the bottom of the pile was a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about any of this while I could still explain it in person. I kept thinking I'd have more time. Cancer has a way of making liars of us all. I know this is a burden to put on you, but you're the only one I trust. Patricia knows what to do. Follow her lead. And know that everything I did to protect you and what we built together. I love you. Always have. Always will. Dad." I read it 3 times. Then I called Patricia. "I need to file a police report," I told her, "for breaking and entering, and I need to know how quickly we can move on the fraud case." "The criminal complaint is already drafted," she said. "I was waiting for your go-ahead. As for the will contest, we can file tomorrow morning. Do it." "This is going to get ugly," Patricia warned. "They'll fight back. Probably accuse you of manipulating your father, of forging documents, of elder abuse. Richard has money and connections. Your stepmom is very good at playing the grieving widow." "I know. You're sure you want to do this?" I looked at Dad's note again, his shaky handwriting, the coffee stain in the corner where he'd been working at the kitchen table. I'm sure. The next morning, Patricia filed everything: the will contest, the fraud complaint, a restraining order against both my stepmom and Richard. By noon, the story had hit the local news. Widow accused of fraud in $1 million estate battle. My phone started ringing. Reporters, Dad's old business partners, people from the country club offering sympathy and fishing for gossip. I ignored all of it. At 2 p.m., my stepmom's lawyer called. My client would like to discuss a settlement, he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. She's willing to split the estate 50-50 if you drop the fraud allegations. No, that's $1 million you're turning down. It's not her $1 million to offer. Miss Collins, I understand you're emotional right now. Your father just passed, and you're dealing with a lot. But these accusations are serious. If you proceed with this, you're going to drag your father's name through the mud. His reputation will be destroyed. Is that really what he would have wanted? My father wanted the truth, I said. Check your email. I just sent you 6 months of bank statements. Silence. We'll be in touch, he said finally. They weren't in touch. Instead, 3 days later, my stepmom gave an interview to the newspaper. She sat in the living room, the one she'd redecorated, wearing black and dabbing at her eyes. I loved Richard, she told the reporter. He was my husband, my partner, my best friend. And now his daughter, who barely visited him while he was dying, is trying to destroy everything we built together. She's claimed I forged documents, stole money, had an affair. It's all lies. Richard left everything to me because he knew I would honor his legacy. His daughter is just bitter, because she never had a real relationship with him. The photo showed her holding their wedding picture, looking devastated. I read the article twice, then sent it to Patricia with one word. Thoughts? Patricia called immediately. Don't respond, don't give a statement, don't engage with the press at all. We have the documents, we have the truth. Let her hang herself. She's making me look like a monster. She's making herself look sympathetic. For now. When the bank records go public, that sympathy will evaporate fast. Patricia was right. The fraud hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I spent that time organizing every piece of evidence Dad had collected. Every transfer, every email, every text message. Patricia and I built a timeline that showed exactly when the embezzlement started, how much had been taken, and where it had gone. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad in that hospital bed, handing me the envelope with shaking hands, how he'd looked at me and said, I trust you. At 3 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Drop this, and I'll give you $2 million cash. Keep going, and you'll regret it. I screenshot it, forwarded it to Patricia and the police, and blocked the number. Another text came through from a different number. Your father wouldn't want this. Think about what you're doing to his memory. Screenshot, forward, block. Then my email pinged. A message from Richard's personal account. You're in over your head. I have lawyers who will eat you alive. I have friends in the DA's office. I have resources you can't even imagine. Walk away while you still can. I replied with a single sentence. See you in court. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, about 20 seats for observers. Patricia sat beside me at one table. My stepmom and her lawyer sat at another. Richard wasn't there. His lawyer said he was out of the country on business. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She looked at the case file, then at us. This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's sufficient evidence to proceed with a fraud investigation, she said. Ms. Chen, you're representing the petitioner? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have extensive documentation showing systematic embezzlement from the deceased's company, forgery of testamentary documents, and conspiracy to defraud. That's a serious accusation. We have serious evidence. The judge turned to my stepmom's lawyer. Mr. Bennett? He stood, smoothing his tie. Your Honor, this is a vindictive attack from a young woman who feels slighted by her father's choice to leave his estate to his wife. There is no fraud. There is only a daughter who can't accept that her father moved on after her mother's death. Ms. Chen, present your evidence. Patricia opened her laptop. The screens on either side of the room lit up with bank statements. These are monthly transfers from Collins Industries to a shell corporation called Meridian Holdings. The transfers began 14 months ago and totaled $270,000. Meridian Holdings is registered to Richard Donovan, the defendant's romantic partner. My stepmom's face stayed neutral, but I saw her hands clench in her lap. Patricia clicked to the next slide. Emails between Richard and my stepmom. These communications show the defendants discussing how to access Mr. Collins's accounts during his illness. In this email dated March 15th, 3 weeks before Mr. Collins's death, Mrs. Collins writes, he signed the POA this morning. Barely knew what he was doing. We're clear to move forward. Click. Next slide. This is the power of attorney document signed while Mr. Collins was on heavy pain medication. His oncologist's notes from that day indicate he was experiencing significant cognitive impairment due to his medication regimen. Bennett stood. Your Honor, this is speculation. Mr. Collins was a competent adult who made his own decisions. Sit down, Mr. Bennett, the judge said, not looking up from the documents. Ms. Chen, continue. Patricia presented everything. The shell corporations, the property in the Caymans, the text messages about waiting for Dad to die, the forged will that gave everything to my stepmom, dated just 5 days before Dad's actual death. Then she presented the real will, the one Dad had signed with his actual lawyer, witnessed and notarized, leaving everything to me. The deceased clearly stated his intentions, Patricia said. He even wrote a letter explaining why he'd changed his will and documenting the fraud he discovered. I'd like to see that letter, the judge said. Patricia handed over the original. The judge read it slowly, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Collins, Did you have an affair with Richard Donovan while married to the deceased? My stepmom's lawyer started to object, but she put her hand on his arm. When she spoke, her voice was different from the grieving widow voice she'd used with the reporter. Harder. I'm not answering that without immunity. That's not how this works, the judge said. Did you forge your husband's will? I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The courtroom went very quiet. The judge closed the file. I'm finding sufficient evidence to proceed with a full investigation. The DA's office will be notified. Mrs. Collins, I'm freezing all assets from the estate pending resolution of this matter. You're also ordered to appear for a deposition within 14 days. She looked at me. Miss Collins, the original will appears valid. I'm granting you temporary control of the estate and the residence. Mrs. Collins, you have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from the property. The gavel came down. My stepmom stood so fast her chair tipped over. This is insane. That house is mine. Everything is mine. He promised me. Your Honor, Bennett said, trying to regain control. We'd like to request a stay of this order while we... Denied. We're adjourned. The judge left. My stepmom turned to me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. You have no idea what you've done, she said. Actually, I replied, I know exactly what I've done. She left with Bennett, their whispered conversation echoing in the hallway. Patricia packed up her laptop. Well, that went better than expected. What happens now? Now the DA decides whether to file criminal charges. The will contest will proceed separately, and you get to change those locks. I went home that afternoon with a locksmith. We changed every lock, every code, every key. When we finished, I stood in the foyer of the house I'd grown up in, the house my father had built, and felt something shift. This was mine now, really mine. I spent the next 2 days watching my stepmom's moving truck come and go. She didn't speak to me, just directed the movers with tight lips and sharp gestures. I'd had Patricia go through the house first, inventorying everything that was Dad's. The furniture his parents had left him, his book collection, the paintings he'd bought on trips before he'd met her. She tried to take the dining room table. That was a wedding gift, she said when I stopped the movers. From my grandparents, I countered. To my parents. My mother. Not you. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The movers set the table down. When she finally left, she stood in the doorway and looked back at the house one last time. Richard will bury you, she said. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. See you at the deposition, I said, and closed the door. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in weeks. No hotel, no fear. Just silence and the sound of the house settling. The deposition came faster than I expected. Patricia prepped me for 3 hours the day before. They're going to try to rattle you, she said. Make you seem emotional, unstable, greedy. Don't take the bait. Answer only what's asked, don't elaborate, and for God's sake, don't lose your temper. I won't. Everyone says that. Then Bennett gets in their face and suddenly they're screaming about how their stepmom is a gold-digging monster. I won't scream. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. Your father chose well. You've got ice in your veins. The deposition room was small and windowless. A court reporter sat in the corner. Bennett was already there with my stepmom. She dressed carefully, conservative suit, minimal makeup, wedding ring prominently displayed. Patricia and I sat across from them. Bennett started easy. Background questions. How long had I known my father was sick? When I'd last visited him in the hospital? My relationship with my stepmom. Would you say you and Mrs. Collins had a good relationship? He asked. No. Why not? She married my father when I was 18. She was 31. She wasn't interested in being my parent, and I wasn't interested in pretending she was. Did you resent their marriage? No. You didn't feel replaced? My mother died when I was 12. No one could replace her. My father's relationship with his second wife was separate from my relationship with him, but you didn't approve. I didn't need to approve. He was an adult. Bennett smiled like I'd said something revealing. Did your father discuss his will with you before he died? Yes. What did he say? That he was leaving everything to me. When was this conversation? 2 days before he died. And you weren't surprised by this? No. He'd always told me the house and the business would be mine someday. So you expected an inheritance. Patricia put her hand on my arm. Asked and answered. Move on, Mr. Bennett. He changed tactics. Did you know your father was having financial problems before he died? No, because he wasn't. Collins Industries lost $270,000 in the past year. Collins Industries was defrauded of $270,000 in the past year. I corrected. By Richard Donovan and your client. Objection, Bennett said, though there was no judge to object to. That's an accusation without evidence. We have 6 months of documented transfers, Patricia said, along with emails planning those transfers. That's not an accusation. That's a fact. Bennett's jaw tightened. Did your father tell you he believed his wife was stealing from him? Yes. He showed me the evidence he'd collected. And you didn't think to report this to authorities while he was alive? He asked me not to. He wanted to handle it after his treatment was finished. How convenient. A story from a dead man who can't confirm it. He left a letter, I said, explaining everything. You've seen it. I've seen a letter allegedly written by your father. We have handwriting experts who can testify it was forged. Patricia leaned forward. Then get them. We'll provide exemplars of Mr. Collins' handwriting. Signed checks, contracts, birthday cards to his daughter spanning 20 years. Let's see your experts try to claim she forged all of that. The room went silent. Bennett flipped through his notes, looking for another angle. Let's talk about the day your father died. You were alone with him for several hours that morning. Yes. What did you discuss? He was barely conscious. We didn't discuss much of anything. But he was alert enough to give you this envelope with the will? It was the day before he died, not the day of. And yes, he was lucid for about 15 minutes. Lucid enough to completely disinherit his wife? Lucid enough to protect what he'd built from the people stealing it. You're very certain about this fraud claim. I'm certain because I've seen the evidence. Evidence you claim your father collected. Evidence that exists independently of anything I claim. Bank records don't lie, Mr. Bennett. He switched directions again. How much money did you expect to inherit? I don't know. I never asked. You never asked what your father's estate was worth? No. You expect me to believe you had no idea you were inheriting millions? I knew my father was successful. I didn't know the exact numbers. But you knew it was substantial. I knew it was more than $50,000. My stepmom shifted in her seat. First time she'd moved during the whole deposition. Bennett caught it too. What's significant about $50,000? That's what your client offered me, out of a $2 million estate. She offered you a settlement. She offered me a payoff, to accept her forged will and walk away quietly. You're accusing Mrs. Collins of attempted bribery now? I'm stating what happened. Patricia checked her watch. We've been here for 4 hours, Mr. Bennett. Unless you have new questions, I think we're done. Bennett looked at my stepmom. She leaned over and whispered something. He nodded. Just one more question, he said. Did you love your father? The room went very still. I looked at him, then at my stepmom, then back at Bennett. Yes, I said quietly, which is why I'm doing this. He had no response to that. We left them sitting there. In the parking lot, Patricia unlocked her car and tossed her briefcase in the back seat. You did good. Better than good. Bennett's desperate. He knows they have nothing. So what happens next? We wait for the DA. If they file charges, this gets easier. If they don't, we proceed with the will contest and let the evidence speak for itself. How long? Weeks. Maybe months. These things move slowly. But they didn't. 3 days later, Richard Donovan was arrested trying to board a plane to the Caymans. The DA filed charges for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. My stepmom was arrested the same day. The news ran the story that night. Local businessman and widow charged in $1 million fraud scheme. I watched it from my couch, in the house that was legally mine now, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just tired. My phone rang. Patricia. They're offering a plea deal, she said without preamble. Your stepmom returns everything she took, pleads guilty to lesser charges, serves 2 years. Richard takes the fall for the rest, gets 8 years. What about my father's estate? Cleared. The will contest is withdrawn. Everything goes to you as specified in the original will. And if I don't accept the plea, then we go to trial. They both risk 15 years. But trials are unpredictable. Juries are unpredictable. And you'll spend the next year reliving all of this. I thought about Dad's letter, about his shaky handwriting and the coffee stain, about him saying he trusted me. Take the deal, I said. I'm done. The plea hearing was brief. My stepmom stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked small, diminished. Do you understand the charges against you? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. And you're pleading guilty to fraud and conspiracy? Yes, Your Honor. Do you have anything to say before I accept this plea? She looked at me for the first time since the hearing started. I loved your father, she said. I know you don't believe that, but I did. Then you have a strange way of showing love, the judge said. 2 years in state prison followed by 5 years probation. Restitution in the amount of $270,000 plus interest. Do you accept these terms? Yes, Your Honor. The gavel came down. Richard's hearing was the same day. He didn't look at me, just stood there in his expensive suit, looking annoyed, like this was all a minor inconvenience. 8 years. Restitution. Lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. Patricia followed. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Like I can finally breathe? Your father would be proud. I hope so. She squeezed my shoulder. The estate will be fully transferred within 30 days. The house is already yours. The business will need some work. Richard did a number on the books, but it's salvageable. Your father built something solid. Thank you, I said, for everything. Just doing my job. She smiled. Though I have to say, this was one of the more satisfying cases of my career. Your father chose the right person to trust. I went home to the house that had been in my family for 3 generations. I walked through each room, remembering. The kitchen where Dad taught me to make pancakes. The study where he'd help me with homework. The porch where we'd sit and watch storms roll in. In his study, I opened the desk drawer where I'd found his letter. It was empty now. Everything valuable had been cataloged and secured. But underneath the drawer liner, I found something I'd missed before. A photo. Dad and me on my college graduation day. He was healthy then, before the diagnosis. We were both laughing at something. I couldn't remember what. On the back, in his handwriting, proudest day of my life. You're going to do amazing things. I put the photo on his desk, right where he used to keep his coffee. Then I called the manager Dad had left in charge of Collins Industries. It's time to talk about the future, I said. Over the next 6 months, I learned the business. I met with every department head, reviewed every contract, understood every aspect of what Dad had built. I was 23 years old, running a company worth millions, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned. Fast. I found the holes Richard had left, accounts that needed reconciling, relationships that needed rebuilding, trust that needed to be earned back. I worked 80-hour weeks. I made mistakes. I asked for help when I needed it. And slowly, Collins Industries recovered. A year after Dad died, I stood in the office that used to be his. Our revenue was up 15%. We'd brought on 3 new major clients. The board had voted unanimously to keep me as CEO. I opened my laptop and started an email to Patricia. Thought you'd want to know. The business just hit a record quarter. Dad built something strong. I'm just trying to honor that. Thank you for helping me protect it. Her response came back within minutes. He knew what he was doing when he left it to you. Congratulations. You've earned this. I looked at the photo on my desk. Dad and me laughing. I hope I'm making you proud, I said to the empty office. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the business success. Impressive what you've built in a year? I stared at it. Then another text came through. This is Victoria, your mom's sister. We haven't spoken since you were little, but I've been following the news. What you did? Standing up for your father, fighting for what was right, that took real courage. I'm proud of you. If you ever want to connect, I'd like that. I'd forgotten I had an aunt. After Mom died, her family had drifted away. Too painful, they'd said. Too many memories. I typed back, I'd like that too. Within a week, we'd had coffee. She told me stories about my mother I'd never heard, showed me photos I'd never seen, connected me with cousins I barely remembered. Your mom would be so proud of you, she said. Standing up to that woman, protecting what your father built. That's exactly the kind of person she was. Strong, principled, unwilling to back down when something mattered. I wish I remembered her better, I admitted. I was so young when she died. She was fierce, Aunt Victoria said, and she loved your father completely. They were partners in every sense. He never really recovered from losing her. I think that's why he was vulnerable to someone like your stepmom. He was lonely, and she was good at seeming like what he needed. She was good at a lot of things, just not at being honest. True, Aunt Victoria smiled. But she underestimated you, and that was her biggest mistake. I thought about that a lot in the months that followed. How my stepmom had seen a 23-year-old girl and assumed she'd be easy to manipulate. How she'd thought grief and inexperience would make me helpless. She'd been wrong. 2 years after Dad's death, I got a letter from the prison, my stepmom, asking if I would visit. I showed it to Patricia. What do you think? I asked. I think it's your choice. She served half her sentence. Maybe she's had time to think about what she did. Or maybe she wants something. Probably. But that doesn't mean you can't hear her out. I thought about it for a week. Then I drove to the State Women's Correctional Facility on a Saturday morning, signed in, went through security, sat in a visiting room that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. She looked different, older. Her hair was fully gray now, pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes, just prison-issue scrubs and tired eyes. We sat across from each other with a table between us. Thank you for coming, she said finally. Why did you want to see me? To apologize. I waited. I know you don't believe me, she continued. And I don't blame you, but I am sorry. For what I did to you, for what I did to your father's memory, for all of it. Okay, that's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I asked. That I forgive you? That it's all water under the bridge? I want you to understand. Understand what? That you married my father for his money? That you stole from him while he was dying? That you tried to cut me out of my own inheritance? I understand all of that perfectly. She flinched. I did love him, at first. But Richard was... She trailed off. Richard was what? Rich? Exciting? Willing to help you steal? It doesn't matter now. No, I agreed. It doesn't. We sat in silence for a moment. You've done well, she said finally, with the business. I've heard things, seen articles. You're good at it. Dad taught me. He did love you, more than anything. I was jealous of that, if I'm being honest. The way he looked at you, like you hung the moon. He was my father. I know. She twisted her hands together. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, for whatever that's worth. I stood up. It's worth something. Not much, but something. Will you come back? No, I said. This is goodbye. I left her sitting there and walked out into the sunshine, drove home to the house that would always be mine, went to work on Monday and ran the company my father had trusted me with, and I never looked back. 5 years after Dad died, Collins Industries was thriving. We'd expanded into 3 new markets. Revenue had tripled. I'd been featured in business magazines as one of the youngest successful CEOs in the state. I kept Dad's photo on my desk, kept his leather chair, kept his philosophy of treating employees fairly and building something that would last. On the anniversary of his death, I visited his grave, brought fresh flowers, sat in the grass beside the headstone. I think we did it, Dad, I said. Everything you wanted. The business is strong. The house is full of life. Aunt Victoria comes for dinner every Sunday. I'm building something that will last. The wind rustled through the trees. I miss you, I continued, every day, but I'm okay. Better than okay. You taught me well. I stood up, brushed off my pants, and headed back to my car. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Board meeting in an hour, quarterly reports ready for review. I smiled. Dad would have loved this.